Let us call to order the work session for the Pinehurst Village Council of October 14th, 2025. We'll be taking up general business with item A, which is update on timed parking enforcement of downtown on-street parking. I will turn to the village manager because I know he knows this topic quite well.
Yes, so as you recall, we set into place timed parking for the downtown effective July 1st. We had Larry really start in earnest a little bit later, probably around August 1st, and he took some time getting to know people, letting people know about the rules. He has been, to this point, on the lenient side, trying to help people understand the rules, and I think it's worked well.
Didn't have the signs on July 1st.
Yeah, right. The signs didn't get in until late July. And so we have heard anecdotally that it has improved the parking situation. People feel like there is more parking on street. One of my worries was that the sand lot was going to be too full and not be able to accommodate everyone, but that also seems to not be a problem, so that is good news for the moment. Larry and I had a good discussion a couple weeks ago. He is a highly visible person out there. He is also very friendly and easy to get along with, so he's a great ambassador to the community, and he's, talks with me frequently so he can pass on anything that he hears from the downtown community. One thing that's really nice is that he is there, he's got his radio, he's trained in CPR and other first aid, so he provides, a nice safety effect there as well. Just his presence on the street is helps with enforcement and compliance, and it's a deterrent for people that might otherwise park all day long in front of a certain store. One thing Larry did mention was that we currently have the pickup trucks. Anything over 18 feet is not supposed to park in diagonal parking. He said that might be a little too restrictive. He would recommend us moving it to 19. So that's something we can live and learn, but something we may want to consider in the future changing. But in general, it's going well. I don't know if council has any feedback they want to provide to us.
I'd like to point out one thing for those of you who missed it. The pilot produced a photograph of Larry. They did not allow his face to be shown, I guess, to protect him. But I just want to compliment the pilot on that. This is a collector's item of a photo right next to the editorials. And I, too, have interacted with Larry, and I really think if you were looking for someone to be the perfect person to do this job, we found that person. He's affable, and he's serious at the same time, and I think really it was a good decision. Doug and the staff, that was I think the right fit, and we now over time we'll have a little data, and we'll see what goes on. But and I asked once, and it was clarified to me, he goes down both Cherokee, Chincoquin, and Market Square. So he's covering all those, and I guess a little of Dogwood, probably.
Yeah, he tells me he covers 5 miles in a shift, so
I believe it.
He's walking a lot.
I was driving into town maybe about 3 weeks ago on Cherokee, and walking between the Tufts Gibbon Library and downtown, walking toward the village, where someone said parking enforcement on the back of his shirt. So I thought, this has to be Larry. So I pulled into a parking space and went over and introduced myself. He mentioned that in part of his military career, he was an MP at one point. So I think we have a person skilled in conflict resolution. He had several stories to tell about experiences he had so far. I do think he's doing a good job. I get generally positive feedback from the merchants there. He has begun to encounter the inevitable people who think they have some inherent right to a parking space, whether they're a tenant, whether they're a shopkeeper, shop owner, what have you. But it's good to hear generally that people do think, on average, it's working well. I had one other thing on trucks, if there's nothing else. Is
I was
it-
just going to add that I'm getting the same feedback. I'm getting the same feedback from downtown folks. They're pleased with it.
So I think our standard was 18 feet, I think. And I don't know what made me do this, but probably because it's easy to do on the internet. I actually looked up trucks sold in the United States, and I believe these are all the models, or this certainly encompasses 99% of all the vehicles sold. And what the manufacturers list as their vehicle length, and obviously it depends, there are different options, there's not one size fits all. And this is without the hitch, and that's really the point. If 18 feet was the right number, you know, that would encompass more than half of the models out there, not necessarily by volume, but it would certainly encompass a lot of them. And we don't want Larry walking around with a tape measure. But I think he can use something like this as a guideline. I'm also told that the length of the parking stripes is 17 feet on the diagonal, which gives you a pretty good idea. And I don't want people deciding to drive their truck an extra 2 feet up onto the sidewalk so that the rear end of the truck is not sticking out past. I think, and Jack, the issue is the guy with the 18-foot truck and the trailer hitch. And where's most of the diagonal parking? It's on Market Street, and it's on one end of Market Street, where if you have the FedEx truck and you have someone parked there, there is no ability for anyone to get through. I always hope when we pass ordinances like this that we write 0 tickets. The goal is not for us to write a high volume of tickets, and we certainly don't do it on a money-making basis. But I think we do have to be serious about deciding what the ordinance should be, and whatever it is, then we should enforce it. I'm not struck on 18 feet. If we think we need to use a different number, I'd be happy to consider that.
I do think Doug's correct. We ought to give this a little time about whether or not we tinker with the current
That's fine with me.
length of a truck and so forth, and then we can revisit it. But that's just my feeling.
Well, the issue is our streets are too narrow for the diagonal parking these
Well.
days. I mean, there was a significant proposal, along with building the Sandlot, was to take diagonal parking off of Cherokee, for example. Actually, make the road a little narrower and make the sidewalk bigger. So that would have eliminated diagonal trucks going out of Cherokee. I mean, that's another alternative. Do we really, does diagonal parking make sense on some of our streets? Or we could take the 4 or 5 parallel spaces on the north-south side of Market Street out and just have diagonal parking there, and that would add some width. Anyway, so it's a combination of things.
Yeah.
Live with it, but it's awkward at best at times and dangerous occasionally. My other sense is we are having greater success not having food delivery trucks coming in the middle of the day on Chinquapin. I don't know that it's solved 100%, but we've kind of said, you know, you got to be out of here by 9:30, or you got to park over in the designated commercial
Yeah.
space.
I think Larry's made a concerted effort to talk to all those delivery truck drivers and help make that happen. And I think it's totally fine for us to wait a little longer and, you know, wait a little bit and then reconsider whether we want to change 18 to 19 feet.
Yeah, I agree. Let's not overreact here, but it is an issue from time.
Yeah, please convey to Larry the council's support of his efforts and the way he's professionally conducted himself. I think it shows by the comments we all received. Okay, anything else on this topic for now? Okay, I think we can move on to item B, the short-term rental monitoring and enforcement. Doug, you have a memo to us, and let us discuss as appropriate.
Fair, I'll cover this at a high level, and then feel free to ask any questions that you might have. So, as far as ordinance 2215, we have been actively monitoring how many new short-term rentals have gone into existence since the ordinance has passed. And you can see the numbers here. Right now, there's about 537 active short-term rentals, and about 386 of those have a valid non-conforming use certificate or were grandfathered. They were proven to be in operation before the ordinance went into effect. That leaves about 150 properties that are advertising, but have not, at this point, the vast majority of those have not exceeded the 14-day per year limit. There were earlier in the year, in June, we issued enforcement letters to 11 people that had exceeded the 14-day limit. All of those have come into compliance except for one, which for a time we thought had come into compliance, and then recently they started renting. So we have been working with our village attorney, provided our sample notice of violation. Just want him to get signed off on that before we potentially move to our next step.
Yeah, I think that particular piece of data is quite telling, that there were 11 notices of violation, a small amount in the overall scheme of things. But upon just contacting people, 90+% of them got in compliance. So to me, that's a sign of cooperation among the people in the village and the people who own short-term rentals. We have other areas to address, but I took that away as one of the key things that sort of made me feel good, that the system is working. Those were all quiet episodes of enforcement. A letter, probably a discussion, and people got in compliance. Is that a right way to say how it went?
Yeah, that's very accurate. I mean, some of those 11 actually were able to prove that they were in existence before
Sure.
the ordinance went into effect. But yes, they have all come into compliance, and we have not had any major issues.
Okay, please continue. Thanks.
All right, so that was the first part.
Doug, before we go off this,
Yep.
my memory, which could be wrong, was that we had actually issued something like 270 NCUCs. So is the difference between that and the 386 properties that did not exceed the 14 days?
No, so the difference between the 270 and the 386 are ones that are legal, non-conforming. They were in existence before the ordinance passed.
But they either
Even though-
chose not to
but-
apply for an NCUC or they forgot,
They-
they missed
yeah.
the
Correct,
deadline?
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to section 2, we did a review of any non-continuous use of short-term rentals, so anything that had not been in use for more than 365 days. We looked at all of those, and there were only 2 properties that were potentially questionable. They had both rented for less than 14 days in the past year, so those wouldn't have even been considered a short-term rental at that point. So I think we have checked this box. Everyone is in compliance with this item.
Another good sign. Go ahead.
Yeah. The next section, enforcement of our SR9 standards. This is something we're looking at. I've shared some information with council that somewhat limits our ability to inspect homes on this, but we are keeping this in mind, and we're trying to do what we can to make sure that people are in compliance with our SR9 standards.
This, I think, is the hardest one for residents to understand. If it's a 3-bedroom house and there are 9 trucks parked there, why can't we do anything about that? Because something must be going on. What's the best, are there options available to us that we're not using, or what is the best response to that?
Well, so, and I mentioned this in the memo earlier, but anything that's, a non-conforming prior to the ordinance going into place is still a non-conforming and should be a legal non-conforming. So that limits our ability to go after some of these, particularly for occupancy. But if there is 9 trucks and it's a 3-bedroom house, I mean, they could have visitors. There could be a lot of things that go into that. I don't think an ordinance has been violated if there's a lot of trucks in the yard. So, yeah, at that point, I don't think there's anything the village can do or really should be doing. Any other questions on section 3 here? So section 4, nuisance enforcement. This is, maybe where we could, I do think our police department has done an admirable job reaching out to this, but this is always where we get the complaints and to see what we can do. There have been a couple of locations that we get the majority of our complaints on. I've talked to the police chief, and he has directed patrol officers to visit those when they have time. I have confirmed that they are doing that, so hopefully that helps alleviate some of the concerns there. And we need people to be able to call the police when there is an issue. That way we can go out there and enforce it. If there is a violation that occurs after 3 violations of our either unruly property or noise ordinance violations, we can go after the actual property owner. So if there's a concern about a certain property, but you don't call it in, there's not much we can do about it. And we certainly can't go after the owner unless we have verified violations, multiple ones on site.
This has sort of been ongoing even before short-term rentals. I mean, nuisance.
Right, and I mean, there's nuisances, there's loud noises at my house all
Nuisance
the
to
time.
you may
so.
not be a nuisance to me, right?
I did appreciate the information that the police provided to you and you shared with us about they actually have the data, the history of certain addresses. And I think I wrote back to the effect of it'd be nice to see which are the ones that sort of pop up regularly because some of these now, the few that there are few, are addresses that we are sort of becoming familiar with. And hopefully we can steer that ship to one where there's more compliance. But I'm impressed with the data again, so that we realize that this is not something that is, the problems are not on every street or in every neighborhood, but there are some isolated areas that just are, everybody grew up on a block where there was some kid who was always throwing stuff in your yard. There was always somebody, everybody knew it was where it was happening and what was the problem. And so I encourage that data to continue to be shared. It's very helpful. I don't know how the rest of you felt who have read that, but I found it very useful.
That's really all I have as far as a presentation, so if there's anything else, happy to address it.
I do think that one of the things that we've talked about in the past as we've been going through the PDO as to what we may or may not want to do after we finish the PDO regarding looking again at the STR ordinance, if there's something that we need to tinker with to help it be more sort of both effective and resident-friendly, we can consider that down the road. Barb,
There are no changes in the PDO relative to the short-term rental.
right, which is
If we want to,
the occupancy.
yeah, I was going to bring that up, Barb, that right now the short-term rental ordinance that was passed in 2022 says the limit is 2 adults per bedroom, two adult guests. And so what we're suggesting is that we could take out the word adult and just say 2 guests per bedroom as a total.
Minor thing. Okay, well, something to think about.
Just realizing that anyone that's currently operating that would not be looking backwards, it would only be looking forward.
Right. Okay. All right. Any other comments on this
I think
topic?
they also, we're going to do a certificate of nonconformance, but that's a general certificate of nonconformance.
Definitions, yeah.
Right.
But we're not issuing new ones or anything like that.
Right.
Okay, that's good.
So I think there's consensus that it's okay to take out the word adults. I don't have an issue with it. I think it's actually very minor in what will actually happen on the ground. So I'm okay with that if council wants to direct us to do that and then update.
Yeah, I put that on the list of things for us to discuss, yeah.
I'm fine with that. But I don't know how much it actually helps, unless someone's going to count the person with 12 children coming out to go to the 3-bedroom house. I mean,
Agreed. And it will really only help if someone comes in and applies to operate a short-term rental, because it's not going backwards on, looking
Right.
back on anything
Right.
that's
All
previous.
right, well, we can look at it. All right. I think that closes the topic there. Do you have anybody have anything else they want to mention on this topic right now? Okay.
just a general question for our PDO update members. Have we asked outside counsel to do a serious review to be sure that inadvertently things didn't
Will
get?
be one of the steps we would absolutely require is that they look at the entire document to make sure that they've
So
reviewed.
not yet, but coming.
I think he's been working all along.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's been reviewing each chapter as it was proposed for a draft, and we will send him the updated draft that comes out tomorrow for the entire document.
Absolutely review completely the adoption draft whenever that shows up.
You mentioned PDO, and I did before we adjourn. I wanted to once again thank particularly Jack and Barb for their efforts in that space, and we look forward to it as it moves along. One resident raised with me the issue of being sure that our engineering standards manual dovetails with the PDO, because you can have people running around with two documents.
We discussed that on Monday, actually, in some depth, that the engineering standards manual, where necessary, will be revised to ensure it's synchronous with the
Will that be
PDO.
done simultaneously, or is that something to do after we adopt the PDO?
I think it's going to be done afterwards. I mean, we have nothing that's defective at this point in time. It's just a matter of there are some, the planning department would like to update the engineering standards manual in some respects, but it's not part of this direct effort. It's a secondary.
Yeah, our contract with Kimley Horn is comprehensive in that it does include the engineering and standards manual.
But can't we cover that in the PDO by saying in the event of a conflict, the PDO will prevail?
There isn't a conflict between anything that's in our existing engineering standards manual and the new PDO.
Right, I mean, it's just a reference document for detailed specifications on engineering standards, stormwater and/or street design, things like that.
All righty, does anyone, excuse me, anything else that they particularly want to bring up? And if not, the only thing I'll ask is, we remind those who are listening or here, we won't be meeting in 2 weeks. We'll be meeting in 2 weeks and 2 days here on April 30th. No, October 30th, I'm sorry. And we'll figure out what we need to have for sure on that agenda as we go forward.
Discussing the traffic circle?
We probably will. Certainly come on the heels of that, so there'll probably be some discussion there. There may be residents who show up and want to tell us their thoughts. And we may be discussing some topics on the PDO, and there may be some other issues. If Doug has anything in particular he thinks we need to discuss, and perhaps we want to address a little bit of the plans for the upcoming retreats and so forth.
Sure, we can talk about that. Trying to think of anything that comes to the top of my mind. Nothing flashes right now, so.
And just on the upcoming meeting, that's going to be on a Thursday, which is obviously a big change for us. Thursdays, I'm in the operating room.
Yeah.
And while I plan on being here, sometimes you can't control certain things in the operating room, and a few things take priority to the council, but someone on the table takes priority. So
Fair enough.
I will be here whenever I can be here.
That's fair enough. We'll,
Got it.
yeah,
No,
yeah,
that's,
We will root for you to be here.
Yeah,
That will be
yeah.
a good thing for everybody.
okay.
Good reminder. Okay. Hearing no other thoughts, I'll entertain the most popular motion of any meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All those in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you and good night.